The Kalthari arena exploded with cheers as the monster they called the Devourer tore into its latest victim. The creature was massive, nearly 12 feet tall, covered in black scales that shimmered under the harsh arena lights. Its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and its claws were stained with blood. This wasn't just any beast. This was the galaxy's most feared predator, engineered in secret labs, designed to kill anything that moved. Arena Master Zelkith watched from his luxury booth high above the killing floor. He was counting credits, watching the numbers climb higher and higher on his personal display. Every death meant more money. Every scream brought more viewers. The Kalthari had turned murder into the galaxy's most profitable entertainment industry, and Zelkith was the richest of them all. Down in the holding cells beneath the arena, Dr. Rebecca Hayes pressed her face against the cold energy barrier. Her hands trembled as she watched another life end on the blood-soaked sand below. 3 months ago, she'd been a xenobiologist on a peaceful research mission. 3 months ago, she'd had a future. Now she was a prisoner, waiting for a death she couldn't escape. But Rebecca wasn't alone in this nightmare. Her 8-year-old son Ethan sat in the corner of their cell, his knees pulled up to his chest, his brown eyes staring at nothing. He'd stopped asking when they were going home 2 weeks ago. Rebecca knew that silence was worse than the questions. It meant her boy was giving up hope. She moved away from the barrier and knelt beside him, gently brushing his hair back from his forehead. It needed cutting. Such a strange thing to notice when death was coming for them. But that's what mothers did. They noticed these things even at the end of the world. The cell door hissed open with a sound that made Rebecca's heart skip. Zelkith entered, his 4 eyes gleaming with something that made her skin crawl. He looked like a massive insect wearing expensive robes, his mandibles clicking together in what she'd learned was his version of a smile. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his translator rendering the alien words into perfect English. "I bring wonderful news." Rebecca stood, placing herself between the monster and her son. "Let us go. We're scientists. We never harmed anyone. We're not part of any war." Zelkith laughed, a horrible chittering sound. "Oh, I have no interest in wars, Doctor. Wars are messy and unpredictable. I'm interested in something far more reliable. Profit." He circled them slowly, studying them like specimens. "Your species has been quite the discovery. Humans. So rare. So unregistered with the Galactic Council. So perfectly vulnerable. What do you want from us?" In 3 cycles the Galactic Games begin. Buyers will come from across 12 star systems. Weapons dealers. Arena owners. Crime lords. They all want to see my beautiful devourer perform. He stopped pacing and looked directly at Ethan. "And I need a grand finale. Something the galaxy will never forget." The blood drained from Rebecca's face. She knew what he was going to say before the words left his mouth, but hearing them still felt like being stabbed. "Your son will be fed to the devourer." "What?" "Before an audience of millions." "No." The word came out as a whisper. Then louder. "No. Take me instead. He's just a child." "Exactly." Zelkith moved toward the door. "A child's fear is pure. Authentic. The audience will feel every moment of his terror. I've already opened galaxy-wide betting. Do you know how much revenue this has generated in just 1 day? More than any event in arena history." Rebecca lunged at him, but invisible force fields threw her back hard against the wall. Pain exploded across her shoulders, but she barely felt it. "Please? I'm begging you. Kill me. Torture me. Just let him live." "Where's the drama in that?" Zelkith paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Doctor? You'll be watching from the observation booth. Your face will be broadcast across the galaxy. Translated grief sells exceptionally well with our core demographic. 3 cycles. Make your peace." The door sealed shut with a finality that crushed the last bit of hope in Rebecca's chest. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Ethan started crying, soft broken sounds that tore his mother's heart into pieces. Rebecca pulled him close, holding him as tight as she could, as if she could protect him through sheer force of will. Her mind raced frantically through options that didn't exist. Escape routes blocked by technology she couldn't understand. Weapons she didn't have. Appeals to mercy that would fall on ears that couldn't hear them. She was a scientist trained to solve problems, and she couldn't solve this one. Across the galaxy, on planets she'd never seen, billions of beings were placing bets. How long would the human child last? 30 seconds? A minute? Would he run or freeze? Would he scream? Rebecca held her son and whispered the only truth she had left. "I love you. I love you so much. And I'm so sorry." The countdown had begun, and nothing in the universe could stop it. 3 cycles felt like 3 seconds and 3 eternities at the same time. The arena had never seen crowds like this. Every seat was filled with aliens from dozens of different species, all of them eager to watch a child die. Holographic viewers across 12 star systems had tuned in, creating the largest audience in galactic history. The betting pools had grown so massive that entire economies were shifting around them. And almost everyone had bet the same way. The human child wouldn't last 30 seconds. Rebecca sat in the observation booth, strapped to a chair she couldn't escape. Medical sensors covered her body, tracking every spike in her heart rate, every ragged breath, every tremor of terror. Her fear was content. Her pain was programming. Cameras focused on her face, broadcasting her anguish to millions of viewers who found entertainment in a mother's worst nightmare. Below, in the preparation chamber, Ethan stood perfectly still while alien handlers moved around him. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but he didn't cry. He'd cried himself empty over the past 3 days. Now there was just a hollow numbness, the kind of shock that comes when a child's brain can't process what's about to happen. One of the handlers, a being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, crouched down to Ethan's level. It wouldn't meet his eyes, but it spoke anyway, the translator turning its words into hesitant English. "Kid, I'm sorry. I wish there was something I could do." Ethan didn't answer. His small fist was clenched around something precious. A data chip his mother had slipped into his hand during their last embrace. It held photographs from Earth. His bedroom. Their backyard. His 10th birthday party that would never happen now. Rebecca smiling. Better days that felt like they'd happened to someone else. The tunnel doors groaned open. Sound hit Ethan like a physical force. The roar of thousands of alien voices, all of them screaming for blood. He walked forward because there was nowhere else to go, his legs moving on autopilot, carrying him toward the light at the end of the tunnel. He emerged onto sand that had been stained dark by years of death. The arena stretched impossibly large around him. Massive screens showed his face in terrible detail. Every tear track. Every trembling lip. Commentators in languages he couldn't understand described him with clinical detachment, discussing his size and probable reaction time like he was livestock. Ethan whispered to himself, repeating the words his mother had told him over and over. "We're explorers. Explorers are brave. We're explorers. Explorers are brave." But he didn't feel brave. He felt small and alone and more terrified than he'd ever imagined possible. The ground beneath his feet began to shake. A gate on the far side of the arena started rising, ancient gears grinding, metal screeching. The crowd's roar built to a fever pitch. Even the most jaded spectators who'd seen hundreds of kills leaned forward in anticipation. The devourer emerged from the darkness. Nothing could have prepared Ethan for the reality of it. The creature was enormous, built like a nightmare-given flesh. Its scales were blacker than space, absorbing light, making it look like a moving void. Eyes glowed with bioluminescent hunger, tracking movement with predatory precision. Claws that had torn through starship hulls scraped across stone. Jaws that could crush steel opened slightly, revealing rows of teeth designed for one purpose only. It hadn't been fed in 6 days. Standard protocol to ensure maximum aggression. To make sure it would kill quickly and violently. The beast's head swung toward Ethan, nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. In the observation booth, Rebecca screamed. The sound was raw and primal, a mother watching her child about to be murdered. She fought against her restraints so hard that blood ran down her wrists. Medical alarms blared as her heart rate spiked into dangerous territory. The broadcast caught every moment, feeding her agony to an audience that couldn't look away. The devourer began moving toward Ethan. Each step was deliberate, powerful, the movement of a perfect predator that had never known failure. A deep rumble vibrated through the arena floor, a sound that came from somewhere deep in the creature's chest. Ethan's legs gave out. He fell to his knees on the blood-soaked sand, every instinct screaming at him to run even though there was nowhere to go. His hands were shaking so badly that the data chip slipped from his grip. It hit the ground and the cracked casing sparked to life. Holographic images projected into the air above it. Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. A small house with a red door and a flower garden. A birthday cake with 9 candles. A woman and a boy laughing together, their faces bright with joy. The devourer stopped. 10 feet away from Ethan, the massive predator went completely still. Its glowing eyes fixed on the holographic images, watching them cycle through moments of human happiness. The aggressive posture shifted slightly. The creature's massive head tilted, studying the pictures with something that almost looked like confusion. The crowd's roar faltered. This wasn't normal behavior. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. Zelkatha's voice exploded across the handler channels, screaming orders. Activate the pain stimulators. Use the shock collars. Force it to attack. Electric current flooded through neural implants embedded in the creature's spine. Enough voltage to drop a transport vehicle. The Devourer's muscles spasmed, but it didn't move from its position. Its eyes stayed locked on those holographic images. The beast lowered itself closer to the ground, its spine curving in a posture the handlers had never seen in years of working with it. Then, slowly, carefully, it moved toward Ethan. The boy couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but watch as tons of engineered killing machine approached him. The creature's massive head came down, until its snout was inches from Ethan's face. And then, impossibly, gently, it nudged him. Not a strike. Not a bite. A gentle push, almost careful, like it was afraid of hurting him. A sound came from the Devourer's throat. Low and mournful, resonating through the arena with a frequency that made some species physically uncomfortable. It was a sound of loss, of recognition, of something deeper than programmed violence. The creature was mourning. The galaxy watched in stunned, absolute silence as the most feared predator in known space coiled its massive body protectively around a small human child. The beast's glowing eyes dimmed to a soft light, and the mournful sound continued, rising and falling like a song of grief. Ethan, shaking and terrified, felt warmth radiating from the creature's scales. Felt the gentle pressure of its coiled body creating a barrier between him and the world. And somewhere in his traumatized mind, a thought formed that made no sense but felt completely true. It was trying to protect him. The broadcast feed exploded with confused chatter. Across 12 systems, billions of beings tried to understand what they were witnessing. In the observation booth, Rebecca's screams had turned to shocked silence. She stared at the impossible scene below, tears streaming down her face, unable to process what was happening. Something had broken in the galaxy's perfect killing machine. Or maybe something had finally awakened. The arena descended into absolute chaos. Zelkatha's voice cracked with rage as he screamed orders through every communication channel. Handlers rushed across the sand with shock rods and neural disruptors. Pain stimulators fired at maximum capacity, pumping electricity through the implants buried in the Devourer's spine. Chemical aggression enhancers flooded its bloodstream through automatic dispensers. Nothing worked. The creature remained coiled around Ethan, creating a living fortress of scales and muscle. Its eyes tracked every handler that came close, and the warning growl that rumbled from its chest was clear enough. Come closer and die. 3 handlers tried anyway. They needed to separate the beast from the child, reset the situation, make the show continue as planned. The Devourer moved with terrifying speed, breaking free from its protective coil just long enough to kill all 3 in seconds. Then it returned to Ethan, curling around the boy who'd passed out from sheer shock and terror. The message was unmistakable. It would die before it let anyone take the child. A voice boomed across the arena's communication system, cutting through the chaos. Stop. Stop the stimulators immediately. Dr. Yarvek stood in the VIP section, his 6 arms raised for attention. He was one of the galaxy's most respected xenobiologists, a council member whose opinion carried weight across multiple systems. Arena Master Zelkath, I'm offering 5 million credits for immediate scientific analysis. Whatever is happening here has never been documented in any species. Zelkatha's greed fought with his fury. The greed won. Credits were credits, and 5 million was enough to soothe even wounded pride. Fine. Brief intermission. But maintain the broadcast feed. Every second of this needs to be recorded. Medical teams rushed onto the sand with portable scanning equipment, keeping a careful distance from the Devourer. The creature's glowing eyes tracked their every movement but showed no aggression as long as they stayed away from Ethan. Its massive body rose and fell with steady breathing, and that strange mournful sound continued, softer now, almost like a lullaby. The scans took 17 agonizing minutes. Dr. Yarvek studied the results on holographic displays that floated in the air around him. His expression shifted from scientific curiosity to disbelief to something that looked like horror. His translator went silent as he muttered in his own language, then he seemed to remember the galaxy was watching. This is impossible, he said finally. Zelkatha's mandibles clicked impatiently. What did you find? The Devourer's genetic structure is exactly what we expected from a Kalthari bioweapon. Fragments from 47 different conquered species, all of them engineered for maximum lethality. Enhanced muscle density. Accelerated healing. Predatory instincts amplified beyond natural limits. Yarvex zoomed in on a section of the genome, highlighting it in glowing red. But there's something else. Something that shouldn't exist in this creature's DNA. The holographic display enlarged, showing a genetic sequence that made several scientists in the audience gasp. Human DNA. Not just random fragments. Specific genetic markers associated with parental bonding, empathy response, and protective instincts. Someone deliberately spliced human genetic material into this weapon. The arena fell silent. Even the broadcast commentators stopped talking. Rebecca, still strapped in the observation booth, felt her entire world tilt sideways. What are you saying? Yarvex's fingers moved frantically across holographic controls, pulling up historical databases. Classified files appeared, marked with security protocols that should have kept them hidden for another century. 50 years ago, the Kalthari Empire ran a classified bioweapon development program. They used genetic material from captured subjects. The program was ultimately scrapped because the specimens showed what they called defective aggression patterns. He pulled up a specific file, and a manifest appeared on every screen in the arena. A list of names. Humans from Earth's early deep space exploration era. People who'd vanished without a trace, their colony ship lost to what everyone assumed was an accident or equipment failure. Rebecca's vision blurred as she read down the list. Then her heart stopped. Michael Hayes. Patricia Hayes. Her grandparents. The explorers who'd left Earth when her mother was just a baby. The family heroes who'd sacrificed everything to seek peaceful contact with other species. They hadn't died in an accident. They'd been murdered. Harvested for parts like laboratory animals. The creature isn't malfunctioning, Dr. Yarvex said, his voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy. It's responding to the human child because somewhere in its engineered genetics, human parental instincts are fighting against its predator programming. When it saw the boy, something clicked. Some deep genetic memory recognized him as something to protect, not consume. Rebecca stared at the massive beast coiled around her unconscious son. That thing carried fragments of her grandparents' DNA. Their stolen genetic code, twisted and tortured into a weapon, was now desperately trying to protect their great-grandson. The irony was so cruel it almost broke her. Zelkith saw the broadcast numbers climbing to unprecedented heights. Viewers across 12 systems were glued to their screens. This was the biggest story in galactic history. He leaned back in his chair, calculating his next move. I want to test this theory. Release a standard prey animal into the arena. Handlers hesitated, but credits bought obedience. They opened a side gate and drove a small creature onto the sand. It was one of the standard animals used to keep the devourer fed between shows, about the size of a large dog, terrified and confused. The devourer's response was instantaneous and brutal. It uncoiled from Ethan with blinding speed, crossed 30 feet in 2 seconds, and killed the prey animal with mechanical efficiency. Jaws closed. Neck snapped. Death came so fast the creature probably didn't feel pain. The devourer consumed it in 4 bites, then returned to Ethan's side, curling protectively around the boy once more. The galaxy watched in stunned understanding. The beast wasn't broken. Its predator programming still functioned perfectly. But it had made a choice. Everything else was prey. Everything except the small human child. Ethan stirred, consciousness returning slowly. His eyes opened to find himself surrounded by black scales that gleamed under the harsh lights. Terror flooded back instantly, his breath coming in panicked gasps. But the creature didn't move aggressively. It shifted slightly, giving him space but not leaving him exposed. That mournful sound came again, softer now, and Ethan realized with a child's instinctive understanding that the monster was trying to comfort him. His small hand, still trembling, reached out slowly. His fingers touched the scarred scales, feeling warmth and the steady rhythm of the creature's heartbeat beneath. The devourer's glowing eyes dimmed to the softest light, like stars seen from a safe distance. In the observation booth, Rebecca watched through tears she couldn't control. Medical alarms still blared around her, but she didn't hear them. She could only see her son, impossibly alive, impossibly safe, protected by a nightmare that carried pieces of her family's soul. Across the galaxy, the same question echoed through billions of minds in hundreds of languages. What kind of species were these humans that even their stolen DNA, even when twisted into weapons of pure destruction, still somehow created bonds instead of breaking them? In government chambers and military headquarters, in laboratories and universities, in homes and gathering places across 12 star systems, beings began to realize that humanity might be the most dangerous species they'd ever encountered. Not because of weapons or technology, but because of something far more powerful that no one had thought to fear. compassion. The broadcast became the most watched event in galactic history, and with that attention came power. Within 6 hours, everything changed. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, demanding immediate access to the arena. Human rights organizations that had barely acknowledged Earth's existence suddenly scrambled to intervene. Military intelligence agencies across a dozen systems began classified discussions about the potential of human-compatible bioweapons. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, weapons dealers started making offers that could buy entire planets. Zelkith sat in his private office, surrounded by enough security to stop a small army. Holographic displays floated around him, each one showing a different threat or opportunity. The council was threatening economic sanctions that could collapse his empire overnight. But weapons manufacturers were offering fortunes for the devourer. Arena owners wanted to license the technology. Crime syndicates promised protection and profit if he'd just sell them the creature. He was sitting on the biggest prize in the galaxy and everyone wanted a piece. Rebecca received a visitor in her cell. Not in person, but as a holographic projection that shimmered into existence without warning. The figure was humanoid but clearly alien, with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Dr. Hayes, I am Ambassador Thrain of the Galactic Council. I'm authorized to offer you a deal that will end this nightmare. Rebecca stood slowly, her body aching from the restraints she'd fought against for hours. I'm listening. Testify before the council about Kalthari genetic crimes. Tell us everything you know about the illegal bioweapon programs, the stolen human DNA, all of it. In exchange, you and your son receive immediate freedom, full citizenship status, and asylum on any council world you choose. Sounded too good to be true. Rebecca had learned that things that sounded too good usually were. And the creature? The ambassador's expression didn't change, but there was a pause that told Rebecca everything. The devourer will be humanely terminated as evidence of illegal weapons research. It's the only option that satisfies interstellar law. Rebecca closed her eyes. Through the small window in her cell, she could see down to the holding chamber where Ethan slept. The boy was curled against the devourer's massive side, finally resting peacefully after days of terror. The creature hadn't moved in 8 hours. Hadn't eaten. Hadn't responded to any stimuli except her son's comfort. No. Dr. Hayes, please be reasonable. That thing is a weapon. It's killed hundreds of sentient beings. The fact that it's showing protective behavior toward your son doesn't change what it is. What it is, Rebecca said quietly, is the only thing standing between my son and death. That thing down there has more of my family in it than you could possibly understand. It's protecting Ethan with DNA stolen from my grandparents. I won't sign its death warrant. The hologram flickered with what might have been frustration. Then you're condemning yourself to life imprisonment. The Kalthari will never let you go without council pressure, and we can't apply that pressure without your cooperation. Then I'll find another way. The ambassador vanished, leaving Rebecca alone with impossible choices. But something was happening outside the arena that no one had anticipated. The broadcast had touched something deep in billions of viewers. Species that had lost family members to Kalthari entertainment, beings who'd suffered under similar systems of exploitation, they all saw themselves in that small human child and the monster trying to protect him. Protest movements erupted across multiple systems. Free them both became a rallying cry that transcended language and culture. Street demonstrations on council worlds. Economic boycotts of Kalthari goods. Even some Kalthari citizens, horrified by what their empire had done, joined the protests. Within 24 hours, an unprecedented coalition formed. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground. They delivered a joint ultimatum to the Kalthari Empire: release the humans and grant the creature protected status, or face total economic and military isolation. The Kalthari leadership faced a choice between pride and survival. They chose survival. Zelkith was summoned before his own government and told in no uncertain terms that he would fix this mess or face execution for bringing disgrace to the Empire. He returned to the arena a different creature, his confidence replaced by desperation. He had Rebecca brought to his office one final time. Dr. Hayes, I'm going to be direct with you because I don't have time for games anymore. My government wants this situation resolved before it destroys our economy. He pulled up holographic contracts, legal documents that filled the air between them. Option 1. You and your son go free immediately. Full pardon, transport to any destination you choose, and a settlement of 1 million credits. The creature gets sold to a private research facility. You'll never see it again, but I promise it will be treated well. Rebecca's jaw tightened. She'd heard enough promises from Kalthari to know what they were worth. Option 2. You agree to stay and face trial alongside me for conspiracy and illegal human experimentation. A completely fabricated charge, but one that will keep you imprisoned for years while the legal process unfolds. However, the Devourer receives protected status as critical evidence and cannot be sold or harmed. Your son goes into council custody. Those are both terrible options. Those are the only options I have authority to offer. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment and then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Zelkith deeply uncomfortable because it didn't belong on the face of someone who was trapped. You're wrong about something important, Arena Master. There's always a third option. That's the thing about humans. We don't accept the choices we're given. We make our own. She turned toward the camera she knew was still broadcasting everything. The galaxy was still watching. Millions of beings were still tuned in, waiting to see how this impossible story would end. I want to address everyone watching. I'm Dr. Rebecca Hayes from Earth, and I'm going to tell you a story about a colony ship that left my planet 50 years ago. About my grandparents who dreamed of making friends among the stars. About what the Kalthari did to them. And about what it means that even after all that horror, something good survived. Zelkith lunged for the broadcast controls, but Rebecca kept talking, her voice carrying across 12 star systems. I'm going to tell you everything. Every detail of the genetic theft. Every crime committed in the name of profit. And then we're going to let the galaxy decide what justice looks like. Not just for me and my son, but for that creature down there that's more human than half the beings who claim to be civilized. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to billions. My family came to the stars to explore. To learn. To build bridges. They were murdered for it. But somehow, impossibly, a piece of who they were survived. And I will not let that be destroyed again. The broadcast numbers exploded. The galaxy leaned in to listen. And Rebecca Hayes began to speak the truth that would change everything. Rebecca's testimony lasted 3 hours and 17 minutes, and the galaxy didn't look away for a single second. She didn't just accuse the Kalthari Empire. She spoke directly to every being watching across 12 star systems, and she spoke to them not as a victim begging for mercy, but as a scientist presenting evidence and a mother defending her family. She told them about the colony ship Horizon, launched from Earth 50 years ago with 300 explorers aboard. People who'd volunteered to leave everything behind to seek peaceful contact with alien civilizations. She explained how the Kalthari had intercepted them in deep space, how her grandparents and everyone else aboard had been taken to secret laboratories. How their bodies had been treated as raw materials, their DNA harvested and spliced into weapons programs that spanned decades. She showed them the genetic evidence that Dr. Yarvex had uncovered, walking them through the science in terms anyone could understand. And then she talked about what it meant that even after all that horror, after 50 years of torture and genetic manipulation, humanity's core traits had survived. The instinct to protect the vulnerable. The drive to form bonds. The unwillingness to let children suffer. My grandparents didn't get to make friends among the stars, she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. They were murdered before they got the chance. But somehow, against every odd, a piece of who they were lived on. And that piece recognized my son. It chose to protect him instead of kill him. If that's not proof that compassion is stronger than cruelty, I don't know what is. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Public outrage became a tidal wave that swept across the galaxy. Government officials who'd been prepared to stay neutral suddenly faced populations demanding action. The Galactic Council, pressured by their own citizens, convened an emergency vote that passed with near unanimity. The Kalthari Empire was given 24 hours to release Rebecca Hayes, her son Ethan, and the creature designated as the Devourer, or face complete economic and diplomatic isolation. The Kalthari leadership crumbled. Within 12 hours, arrest warrants were issued for Zelkith and every official connected to the illegal bioweapons programs. Within 18 hours, the Empire issued a formal apology and began releasing documentation on every genetic crime they'd committed over the past century. Zelkith was arrested in his office, still trying to negotiate deals that no one would accept anymore. He was taken away screaming about lost profits and broken contracts, unable to understand that the galaxy had moved past him. The Council established a specialized facility on a peaceful garden world called Sanctuary Prime. It wasn't a prison or a laboratory. It was built specifically for rehabilitation, designed by the galaxy's best xenobiologists and psychologists to help beings recover from trauma. The Devourer was given a massive habitat with forests and lakes, climate controlled to match optimal conditions for its engineered biology. And Ethan was allowed to visit every single day. The boy had been through trauma that would scar him for life, but he'd also formed a bond that the galaxy's experts couldn't fully explain. He visited Atlas, the name he'd given the creature, every morning and every evening. At first he'd just sit nearby, slowly rebuilding trust. Then he started talking, telling the massive beast about Earth and his home and the life he'd had before this nightmare. Atlas listened. The creature's responses evolved from simple body language to increasingly complex vocalizations. Dr. Yarvex led a team that developed a translation device calibrated specifically to Atlas's unique physiology. The results were remarkable. The creature was learning. Not just commands or responses but actual communication. Simple concepts at first: safe, hungry, happy, sad. But the vocabulary expanded rapidly. Within 3 months, Atlas could express preferences, ask questions, even demonstrate something that looked remarkably like a sense of humor. The human DNA fragment hadn't just affected parental instincts. It had created a cascade effect throughout the creature's entire neural structure. Atlas was developing higher cognition that exceeded anything the original weapons designers had intended. The monster was becoming a person. Rebecca watched this transformation with emotions she couldn't fully process. She was free now, offered positions at universities across the galaxy, given resources to continue her research. Earth had been contacted by the Council, and first contact protocols were underway. Humanity was entering the galactic community not as victims or conquerors, but as the species whose genetic legacy had proven that compassion could survive even the worst cruelty. But Rebecca's focus remained on her son and the creature that had saved his life. She became an advocate for bioweapon abolition, traveling to Council worlds to testify before governments. Her story opened investigations across multiple systems. Countless creatures that had been engineered for violence were re-evaluated. Not all could be saved. Some were too far gone, their minds too broken by programming. But Atlas proved that rehabilitation was possible, and that changed everything. 6 months after the arena, on Ethan's 9th birthday, something remarkable happened. The sanctuary had become their home. Rebecca had accepted a research position there, studying the intersection of genetics and consciousness. Ethan attended school via holographic connection but spent every afternoon with Atlas. The creature had grown calmer, more controlled, showing none of the aggression that had made it the galaxy's most feared predator. Ethan brought Atlas a birthday treat, synthetic meat that the sanctuary's nutritionists had designed to be both healthy and delicious. The creature consumed it carefully, having learned to eat with manners that would have seemed impossible months ago. Then Atlas did something new. The translation device, which had become so familiar that Ethan barely noticed it anymore, crackled to life with a word it had never produced before. Family. Rebecca, watching from the observation platform, felt her heart break and heal at the same time. Ethan's face lit up with joy, and he hugged Atlas's massive snout with the fearless affection of a child who'd moved past trauma into trust. She thought about her grandparents often. Michael and Patricia Hayes, explorers who dreamed of a peaceful galaxy. They'd been murdered for that dream, their bodies used to create weapons. But somehow, impossibly, their legacy had survived. The compassion they'd carried in their DNA had outlasted the cruelty that tried to destroy it. News footage of Ethan and Atlas played across the galaxy constantly. They'd become symbols of something larger than themselves. Species that had been enemies for generations looked at them and asked themselves difficult questions. If a bioweapon could learn compassion, what excuse did civilizations have for continuing cycles of violence? The changes weren't instant or universal. The galaxy was too big, too complex for simple transformations. But things were shifting. Bioweapon programs were being shut down. Arena games faced increasing regulations. Genetic slavery laws were being strengthened. It was a beginning, born from a child's vulnerability and a monster's choice. That evening, as the sanctuary's artificial sun set over Atlas's habitat, Ethan asked the creature a simple question. What do you want to do tomorrow? The translation device hummed softly, then spoke Atlas's response. Learn. Grow. Protect. 3 words that captured everything important. 3 words that were the most human things Rebecca had ever heard spoken by someone who wasn't human at all. She smiled through tears and realized that her grandparents had succeeded after all. They'd wanted to make connections among the stars, to prove that different species could understand each other. In the cruelest way imaginable, their dream had come true. As night fell over Sanctuary Prime, a priority signal arrived at the Council's central communication hub. Deep space origin, using encryption protocols from Earth's early exploration era. The message was weak, distorted by distance and decades of travel, but the words were clear enough to send shockwaves through every government. This is the colony ship Odyssey. Second wave from Earth, launched 52 years ago. Our navigation systems failed. We've been adrift. We finally found the beacon network. Sending coordinates. We need help. And please tell us we're not alone out here. The message continued with a list of names. 347 humans, suspended in cryo-sleep, waiting for rescue that was half a century late. Rebecca read the transmission with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Another colony ship. More humans lost in the dark. But this time there would be no secret laboratories. No genetic harvesting. No weapons programs. This time humanity had allies. She looked at her son playing with a creature that shouldn't exist, protected by laws that hadn't existed 6 months ago, surrounded by species that were learning to see humans as something other than potential victims or threats. The galaxy was about to discover there were more humans out there, lost and waiting and hoping. And this time they weren't coming home alone.